Devday.lk, Sri Lanka's best software development conference, and this is the first year of the conference. With me today I've got Gogula, who's one of our speakers, and you've been speaking on the developer and the database, how to do it right. So how do we do it right?
Well, there are so many different ways that we do it right. Basically, from what I've seen, developers or application developers, they are good, they're awesome at building applications, front-end applications, business T applications. But when it comes to databases, relational databases, they don't do any, there's not much design that they do. And the best practices and the way that they code, sometimes they don't code at all. They just dump everything onto the database and don't think twice about it. So due to this, you get bad database designs or database going down under pressure.
So what is bad database design? How do you recognize it?
Right, there are several different ways that you can recognize it. For one, that you could look at the way it's structured, how the structure has been done. Right. Everybody, when they learn computing and when they learn databases, they are taught the way to design an ER diagram, a relational database, and normalization, and to choose the proper data types depending on your requirements or the types of data that you can, the type of data that you're going to store, and so forth. So by looking at these different things, we could just take a look at the database and know that it's not right. You would see them not using a constraint, for example. Right. You would see them not even creating a primary key constraint in some certain cases. And I have seen cases where they have a primary key column, or they have defined a column as a primary key, but they have not stated it to be a primary key, and then they store null values in them.
Oh, right. That's not good.
Yeah, I've seen databases that bad.
Right. So how do we get into this sort of math?
I think one of the fundamental reasons is that developers like shiny stuff. They like building cool websites, doing awesome logic, building awesome logic on the side which they love most, which is the application development side. Databases are considered ugly and hard to code and drab. So that kind of mindset has prevailed for a long time, I think. So therefore, they don't care too much about the database. They just want to have the front end and the business logics working good.
And so they use some sort of tool to generate the database logic?
In certain cases, yes. In the recent past, you have a lot of tools that do that. But then again, the databases don't come up optimized all the time. Right. For the requirements. Right.
So the use of tools to generate the database or to interact with the database, does that help the situation or hurt the situation?
Certain times it does help, but then when you go into certain specifics, it does not. It just creates the database and the database objects so that it would map properly with the application side of it. So
at the end of it, I mean, if I come to the customer and I say, look, here's a beautiful application, should I really care if the database isn't that good?
I think you should, because sooner or later your database could blow up when you have more and more data coming in. And then, let's say for example, you have lots of data coming in, and then your database slows down, and then you want to go and add an index. And when you go and add an index, sometimes that could break some code. A poorly written code could break.
So, what were some of the other subjects of your talk? Some of the other topics in your presentation today?
Recently, I read about defensive database programming.
Defensive database programming.
That comes quite close to test-driven driven development, but not quite. So I think what they do there is they develop code, modular code, and then they try to test it with whatever possible and improbable cases as well, so that they could make the modular codes more robust.
So could you give some examples?
Okay, a simple example would be the where statement, the where clause of a SQL statement, the way it's evaluated. Let's say for example you have the where statement with two conditions, A and B. There is a misconception where most people think that A gets evaluated first, the first statement gets evaluated first always, and then the second one. whereas in reality it's random.
Random.
It's random. So they would write test cases for A first and then B, and they would test it only on that, and they would not consider testing it in another way.
So I'm
So,
not.
say,
Yeah.
so if you're going to create, let's say, an index, and due to that index, if the query optimizer decides to use the second condition first, then it could sometimes break the code. That may not pop up at once, maybe after 6 months when there's too much of data, and when somebody decides to go and create an index, and that index might break the code.
Ah, so then you've got something that used to work and now it doesn't anymore.
Yes.
What about, so one of the situations that I'm often in is that we've got some existing database that we deal with. How do we deal with a situation where there's existing data already?
Okay, that's a great point. Compared to application development, here we need to consider about existing data. That is why when we are always taught that when you design a database, try to design it right the first time, because you always, because of data in your database, when you go to redesign your database to make it better, sometimes you will find it very hard.
Right.
So there's nothing much that you could do. Maybe you could go for a new design and gradually move to the new design by moving out data and then putting them back, and taking a gradual modular approach.
Sort of a database refactoring?
A sort of database refactoring, yes.
So these are some of the problems that I think developers face when it comes to database, that you've got a database that's designed, that's not really designed well, and when things get bigger it flows up, or when you're changing the indexes things start working in different ways.
Exactly.
And poor normalization or poor use of constraints and things like that. So how can developers become better at using databases?
I think you need to first look at database development as something different than, let's say, for example, C# or Java programming.
Right.
And then you need to think in sets, whereas in application development you look at single pieces of data rather than sets. And then you need to understand that a database management system is itself a different ecosystem, rather than it's not something that they build from scratch. They built only the database, but then there is something that's where the database runs on top of.
Right.
So they need to consider that as well.
So it is a different but equally important part of your system in addition to your application code.
Exactly.
So what do you think of the Devday conference?
I think it was an awesome conference. Coming into this, I felt a little bit skeptical about it. Just another conference organized by a company in Sri Lanka, a software company in Sri Lanka. But afterwards, looking at the way it was organized, the quality of the speakers, and the way the speakers interacted with the audience, the feedback of the audience, the way the audience saw the event, it's awesome. It's really good.
I've enjoyed it a lot as well. Any favorite talks?
My favorite talks, the keynote, obviously.
Yeah.
The closing keynote, and then I think all the talks were quite good. Everything that I attended.
Great. So you're coming back next year?
I sure will.
Are you ready for the lightning round?
I think I am.
Okay. So we'll do a lightning round with questions, and Gogula will answer each question and then ring the bell as you're done with your answer.
Okay.
And our goal is to get through it as quickly as possible. All right. So should I start with the hard ones or the easy ones?
The easy ones.
I think that was an easy one.
Yeah.
Okay. Should I use store procedures? Yes or no?
Yes.
So we have to test it. Try it again. All right. Let's begin again. Should I use store procedures?
Yes.
When should I use store procedures?
Always.
All right. I'll give you a harder one then. What is big data?
Big data is really big data, but it's not just really big data. It is data that keeps on changing often, and it's stored in it's unstructured data, data which does not have a particular structure, and it comes and then it goes, and then it's lost.
What about NoSQL?
NoSQL is cool.
And when should I use NoSQL?
You should use NoSQL if you're using loads and loads of unstructured data.
And how long will we have relational databases for?
I think relational databases would last for a long time because NoSQL is not a replacement for relational databases, and neither is it the other way. So I think you could expect it to be around for quite a long time.
And finally, what is your favorite relational database?
SQL Server, hands down.
Gogula, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.